This is a good one, you guys. This is a super scary one. Blue screen of death. I got so many questions here. Melody, take it away, girl.
Yeah, I don't know that we are going to have a ton of answers because this just happened. And just before the show, we were laughing. I'm a Jill of all trades or a Jack of all trades. And I've had a few different careers in my life, one of which was in technology. I still do develop tech, but I used to be a network administrator. And I can tell you that I would have been terrified to be at work during all of this. So let's just quickly talk about the what, which gets kind of even more curious as we go on. But late Thursday into Friday, basically there were, stories of IT problems emerging, that blue screen of death. Anybody that, grew up as Gen X, we are very familiar with that blue screen of death. Much of my technology career was about how do you avoid the blue screen of death or how do you get out of the blue screen of death. And so at the same time, so there was basically, the thing that is important is that this software, so this, we'll talk a little bit about who they are, but essentially this is like antivirus software. But like Jack said at the beginning of the show, it was banks, airlines, businesses. What's interesting, what they don't, and there are a lot of headlines, a lot of them don't mention government in the headline, but they are also big in our US government. The Department of Education, for instance, was completely down. So fascinating they don't talk about the government in this. But then there was also reports from Microsoft in their Azure, which is their cloud software. But when Microsoft was first contacted, they said that that had nothing to do with the CrowdStrike issue, which again, this is around their Falcon product, which is antivirus software. So, Microsoft then had to come out and really admit, although you can't find a formal statement that really then corrects what they had previously said. So this thing was huge. It was across the world, not in one country, impacting so many. Here's some of the scenes from what was going on. Airports, all those people that had a really stressful day would not be able to go to the liquor store to get their liquor to help. This Times Square, essentially, you can see the blue screens of death all over the place. This was quite a debacle, guys. I mean, just all over. But then how this, I want to talk about what this was really. This was a tiny little one image file in the root directory, a sys file, a system file that went out through this update that CrowdStrike did. And I've got to tell you guys, just with my experience in IT, it just seems very unlikely that this could occur to this level. I mean, when you do an update like this, you're supposed to test it. You're supposed to so there's part of me, half of me can't believe that this happened. And then the other half of me can believe it based on kind of the state of technology when I really left the industry, started my own company, is that there was just so much ineptitude and what would happen. And we hear this a lot in the NVIDIA story is you just would never do things all the way. You would make a lot of promises, but you never would do things to the completeness. So there's half of me that thinks that we don't know the whole story, and you'll find out why here shortly. And then the other half of me thinks that it could possibly be ineptitude. But this to impact so many systems, the amount of testing that should have occurred prior to the deployment of this fix would have been massive. So the fact that this happened means failure for both Microsoft and CrowdStrike. That to me, both of the reputations of those companies should be really impaired. What happens will actually be probably quite different, but we'll talk about that a little bit. But what's really interesting as well is that they're going out and saying this is not a security incident or a cyber attack. And in this article from Bloomberg specifically, they start out with a doctor who was at a London hospital where they were just recovering from a cyber attack. So guys, I think that, one of the greatest threats we actually face right now are these cyber attacks, and we really are not seeing a great response. But it gets even more interesting. So, the WHO, okay, and TechCrunch is really the only one that sort of circled around who CrowdStrike really is. But something that you may not know about them, they're the ones that essentially investigated the Russian hack of the DNC computers in 2016. And they were also part of investigating the Sony hack. And so um, their CEO, his name is Kurtz. And so we're titling the story The Horror, if you guys know Heart of Darkness at all. But this is very interesting. I don't know if you guys heard this in any of these stories. I only heard it in TechCrunch, but they were part and parcel of this entire, DNC investigation. So much that you'll see they have an entire page on their website dedicated to. Now, what's also interesting here is that Kurtz is the former CTO of McAfee. We do not have time to get into that story, but for those of you that do know it, that is an interesting connection. And the other thing is, I don't think any of us should be afraid because Jim Cramer has told us that the company has a stellar reputation. So nothing to fear here, guys. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the CrowdStrike work with the Democratic National Committee. This is a whole very long part of their webpage where they go through all of this, and they're very committed to showing that the intelligence communities held up their work. But there were a lot of questions, and they really could not show any evidence. They could show circumstantial evidence of what had occurred, but in reality, they could not witness in any way the extraction of the information from the DNC computer. So there was a lot of conspiracy around this, so much that in a phone call between Trump and Zelensky, Trump actually thought that this guy, who he's a Russian American citizen, was one of the founders. Trump actually accused this guy of being a rich Ukrainian. So there was a lot that went around this entire story, and so much, guys. But they are proud of their work. They have an entire swag section on their website where you can buy T-shirts and things like that for these criminals that they theoretically help to identify: Fancy Bear, Cozy Bear, Gothic Panda, Charming Kitten, people with names like that. So very proud of this work they did on that DNC hack. But I think that, but on their website, they have to go into whether or not one of their founders was from Ukraine or was Ukrainian. So this is an interesting connection that I think we probably need to pay attention to, because guys, if one little file in a deployment of a security fix was the culprit for this global IT outage, then no one should be using Microsoft or CrowdStrike products, in my opinion, because the failure of testing, if you are part of the IT industry, you just know this should not occur. And then I just want to talk. So we've been talking a little bit about CrowdStrike, and think about it as again, this is a private company who has relationships with our politicians, and that Sony hack. There was a lot of information that got out around that hack with very famous, very influential people. And so this private company is sitting kind of the edge of our politicians and our government. And so I think let's pay a little more attention to who CrowdStrike is. Very interested to see how this story develops. But if they failed in this way, then, I personally wouldn't want to be consumers of either of their products. And the fact is, most of us are. And then, of course, we won't spend a lot of time on it. But who is Microsoft? Well, yeah, they've got some questionable associations as well. But Travis, that is my story for today. I think this one is one we really need to pay attention to in the following days to see what else comes out, because the fact that this got deployed is just it really, no one should accept that answer.
Am I off mute? Because this is my first day at the job. So can you guys hear me?
Welcome, Travis. We can.
Man, no mercy in the comments. I mean, rip me apart, guys, in the comment section. I look at it all as constructive criticism, and I love everyone, to be honest, most everyone. I do have a question, Melody. Hopefully, we can answer this later too. I have a really good comment we'll answer towards the end of the show, but I wanted to throw this article up because as you were talking, I went to like Twitter and stuff because this is really concerning to me. Like, how the hell can they get in my computer? And because I'm a millennial, I know the blue screen of death. I'm an old millennial. So it's like, how the hell are they able to do that? But look at this article right here that I found as you were talking. And I want to know your thoughts on this. Maybe this is a little tinfoily, but I think it's safe to ask questions. Microsoft reportedly fires DEI team, becoming latest company to ditch woke policy. Now, the reason why I think this is suspicious, Melody, is because that was only one day before the whole world got thrown upside down, and it only hit Microsoft, right? They have control over more than just Microsoft. There's other like Apple, right? So do you believe
Linux and Apple, but those Microsoft is well known for its vulnerabilities? But go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you buy that? Do you like this article is kind of suggesting maybe as an inside hit job because they're ditching woke policy? I mean, or do you think that's nonsense?
These days, Travis, one can't really know for sure. But
yes.
To me, this connection to the Russian investigation would be a more powerful motive, for retribution, in my opinion, than firing a DEI person. But who knows? I mean, at this point in time, we've talked about it here on this show, the Lumi on Lumi violence. Just we are in both parties, people of influence are desperately trying to keep hold of their influence. And so we're seeing a lot of crazy things going down.
So I'm curious to see what kind of test was run before they pushed this out. Right. And I mean, I've spoken to some guys in IT who say you always push out an update into a test environment first and you make sure it works before you mass push it out. Like an air gap machine that's not connected to everything else, the whole freaking world. Just maybe we want to test it. So I wonder, are we going to haul CrowdStrike in front of Congress, find out the names of the people who ran that test, examine the documentation associated with that test, and then find out what happened between the test and the rollout? Or was there not a test? Is this $74 billion company that has access to freaking everything not running tests and breaking the whole world? I'd also have a question. Melody, let me ask you this. Hypothetically, let's say you are the CEO of the largest computer firm in the world, largest computer security firm in the world, CrowdStrike. I don't know if they're the biggest. They're up there, though, right? Palo Alto is another big one, but they're among the biggest. And let's say you just had, I don't know, an epic security breach that broke the whole world's internet. Are you going to go out on TV and are you going to cop to that? Are you going to own up that you, the cyber bodyguard of everything, got beat, thus totally destroying the value of your brand? Would you cop to that? Or would you say, sorry, guys, it was just a patch. Our bad. We fixed the glitch.
Yeah. It would be a very hard place to be, right?
Kind of a rhetorical question.
Yeah,
I know. And maybe I need to just don this thing before I do that. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say CrowdStrike would never admit that a bad actor penetrated their system and did something like this. I'm not saying that happened, but I'm saying they would never cop to it if it did, because they'd be destroying their brand, which, by the way, is pretty much destroyed already.
And before you take off your tinfoil hat, there's one thing I forgot to mention is that on Monday, so remember this happened on Thursday and Friday, the chief security officer sold shares for about 1.5 million. So that also happened.
Shout out to my buddy Parrot Capital on Twitter. He posted a screenshot showing all the insider sales, And I tell you what, CrowdStrike is one of those stocks that's been riding the AI mania. Their stock has tripled since ChatGPT was released. They trade at 560 times earnings, like ridiculously overvalued. They're one of the big AI plays. Their executives have been dumping stock left and right while retail have bid up the value of it. So, yeah.
Yep.
Very good point, Mel.
Keep that one on. That's right.
Hey,
but
Melody, I mean, it seems like it's like, I mean, honestly, guys, I mean, there's always like this short trading, like right before a horrible event happens. I mean, can't we just follow the money? I mean, is this really hard to figure out who's doing all this crap? Just follow the money, right? I mean, do you remember that saying, guys? Do you remember that, Melody?
yes,
Follow the money.
absolutely. I mean, well, I think that's always true. Follow the money.